Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the How to Survive podcast. I'm Chris and joining me is Joe.
Hello.
And this week we're going to be talking about a relatively new film, came out last year in 2015, called Bone Tomahawk. And it's a sort of hybrid Western horror film, I think it's fair to say. As ever on the How to Survive podcast, we don't worry about spoilers or anything, so if you've not seen Bone Tomahawk, then go away, find it. It's probably on some video on demand service that you use, and go away, watch it, come back, and then listen to the podcast.
Yes.
Thanks. So yeah, let's dive straight into the narrative. It's the 1890s in sort of frontier America. Mm-hmm. And two drifters, Purvis and Buddy, are sort of killing and robbing travellers of their worldly goods, and they accidentally disturb a Native American burial site.
Is that what it is?
I think so, yeah. Native American burial ground of some kind. Graveyard.
It's a structure.
It's a sort of circular shape of stones in the ground.
Whatever it is, an abomination, that's for sure.
Yeah, and whatever it is, Purvis very quickly set upon by a man. You know, it's ambiguous as to who exactly it is. Set upon and killed by said man while Buddy runs away. Mm-hmm. Further disturbing the burial site. 11 days later, Buddy has run all the way to the town of Bright Hope, where he's clearly hoping to find some peace and quiet after his ordeals. However, Sheriff Franklin Hunt, played by Kurt Russell, hears of the suspicious individual in the town and shoots him in the foot and takes him to the jail. Local man Arthur O'Dwyer is resting at home with a broken leg, and his wife, Samantha, who sometimes helps the town doctor, is called in to remove the bullet from the man's foot.
Because the doctor himself is unconscious through drink.
Yes, of course he is. It's the Old West.
Yeah.
The next morning, however, she, along with Deputy Nick and Buddy, the criminal, have disappeared. So Franklin Hunt, Arthur O'Dwyer, in spite of his broken leg, the deputy, Chicory, and John Bruder, a local womanizer, set off in search of Samantha, Deputy Nick, and Buddy.
Who a local man known as the Professor, who is an Indian himself, he says that they've been kidnapped by a very specific tribe, or not a tribe in a way.
Yeah, they're called the Troglodytes.
Yeah, basically. And they're basically cave dwellers who are to be feared, to put it bluntly.
Yeah. So the four of them set off on what should be a 5-day ride to where the Troglodytes dwell in order to rescue the three of them.
Obviously, O'Dwyer is in a bit of trouble because he's broken his leg.
Yeah.
So he's slowing the pack down a little bit.
Yeah, and he's also hopped up on opiates to get through the pain. They stop for camp one night and two men approach the camp, seemingly innocently, but John Bruder does not hesitate in shooting them both dead, which causes some friction between him and Sheriff Hunt, who says, "You had no cause.
If you want to question my methods, do it later."
That's some of the exciting dialogue from S. Craig Zala's Bone Tomahawk. Later that night, however, they are set upon by a group of bandits who attack them and steal their horses, leaving only Bruder's horse alive but severely wounded. Bruder has to put him out of its misery. They continue walking, but Arthur O'Dwyer exacerbates the break in his leg, and rather than have it amputated, he asks Chicory, the deputy, to set his broken leg and leave him behind.
So that he can recover and make his own way there.
Yeah. The remaining three of them reach the valley where the Troglodytes dwell and are quickly set upon by the group of cannibals. Bruder has his hand cut off by a flying bone tomahawk, and then is later killed. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hunt and Chicory are captured. They're taken back to the Troglodytes' cave where they find Samantha and Deputy Nick. Buddy has already been eaten.
Off screen. We didn't actually see that, but it's implied by... It's not implied, it's said
by Samantha.
Yeah.
While they're trying to figure out a way to get out, Deputy Nick is dragged out of his cage, scalped, has the scalp hammered into the back of his throat by a wooden spike, turned upside down and has his groin smashed in with a tomahawk until they're able to pull him apart in two halves.
Vertically.
Yeah. At which point they kick his guts out of the crack left in his torso and presumably take him away to be eaten.
Yeah.
In what is one of the goriest scenes that I've ever seen in a film.
It was pretty unpleasant.
Yeah.
This is what we were saying last week about but we'll come to this. It's the imaginative horror.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Arthur has recovered enough to mount a rescue attempt on his broken leg. Hopped up on opiates, he decides to have a little sleep in some bushes. Luckily, this means that he manages to get the drop on some troglodytes who think that they're going to sneak up on him, and he shoots both of them dead. He discovers that they've got a sort of weird rudimentary bone whistle inserted into their windpipes, which allows them to make this amazing roaring sound. And he uses it first to attract a troglodyte, who he then kills, and then later to get into the cave, where he succeeds in rescuing Chicory and Samantha. However, his rescue is too late for Sheriff Hunt, who, having mounted his own attempt to escape by poisoning the troglodytes, is taken out and shot
by the leader of the troglodytes.
Realising he's dying, Hunt asks to be left behind with a rifle to finish off the remaining cannibals, and Arthur, Samantha and Chicory basically ride off into the sunset while gunshots echo in the distance, implying that Hunt has succeeded in killing off the last of the cannibal clan. And that's how the film ends.
And everybody lived happily ever after.
Yeah. It's actually a surprisingly happy ending.
Yeah. It's something of a brutal opening, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Having former WCW champion David Arquette slashing someone's throat, but it wasn't a clean cut. He was hacking away at it.
Yeah, blunt tool. I think that's pretty blunt. Is I think a good way of describing all of the violence in the film.
Yes,
basically. So, what did you think of Bone Tomahawk? First of all, it's not a very well-known film.
No,
I believe it's S. Craig Zala's first directorial effort.
A novelist, I believe.
I
don't know of what merit, but based on the writing of the film, I'd say probably quite good. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I did. I think it's in the same vein as other more indie horrors we've discussed, say like Backcountry or It Follows.
Yeah.
But this is more hysterical than the others.
Well, it's more of a genre piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because obviously it takes like its setting, and a lot of the sort of tropes in the film are from the Western genre.
Yeah.
And so it's a sort of weird hybrid horror.
I love Westerns, and I'm on record with you, at least, for saying that Westerns are one of my favourite films.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we finally get to cover some for the podcast.
Yeah, because The Revenant last week is a sort of unusual Western, but definitely a Western.
It's not got any of the tropes of Westerns, whereas this has. I think this sets itself up early on as a traditional Western film.
Yeah.
And other than the opening scene, which is kind of brutal, it's not until maybe 2/3 before you start seeing some real horrible,
and it happens very suddenly as well.
There's the stable boy getting butchered,
but
that's kind of by comparison with the rest of it. That's just like some guy dies,
and like you could write off that and possibly the opening scene as well as just they're just Native Americans, right? And it's like a Native American horror film, right? But it's there is something much more monstrous about the direction the film goes, which takes it away from being just sort of a standard Western film about American Indians.
It's got an almost B-movie aesthetic.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
After, especially in the cave scene, you've got the guy like hacking down the middle and the guts spilling out.
Yeah.
That's the kind of plastic special effects that you get in B movies of the 80s.
Do you not think it was convincing?
I did, yeah. Don't get me, I mean plastic in the sense of it's
tangible.
Yeah. And it uses physical effects rather than CGI. They must have used plastic.
Yeah, it's quite an affecting scene, isn't it?
Yeah, because like, he's alive for it as well.
Yeah,
which is
screaming as well. And the what's quite interesting is that he's not a character who's got any scenes in the film, really. He's in one other scene, basically. And then that happens to him. But there's quite a lot of sort of emotional resonance to it. It's quite an emotional scene. Like,
because everyone else is helpless.
Yeah, and it's deeply unpleasant.
Yes.
And graphically violent.
But the other scene that stuck out as a bit B-movie-like to me was when Sheriff Hunt lops off the villain's head with one swipe of an axe, and it's just left spurting like a fountain.
Yeah,
That's like,
and there's like the stump.
Yeah, it's like Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
It's just so tacky, but it.
Yeah. The other scene that's a bit like that is when John Bruder gets his hand severed.
Yeah.
But at least that's a little bit faster and sort of, there's not as much focus on it. Whereas the decapitation scene, it does seem to hold on the sort of headless torso a little bit too long to ruin the effect.
The head's obviously fake as well. It's not a very good effect, but I don't think it was trying to be. I think at that point it's gone full hysterical B-movie.
Yeah, full genre. Yeah, I thought it was, like you said, his first feature film for S. Craig Zahler.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, he's a novelist, and the dialogue's really good.
Yeah, it's the same as. It's part of the reason I like True Grit, and I like Deadwood for the same reason. It's kind of lyrical, isn't it? And this is less so. This is more just like they've got a good turn of phrase. Yeah. But I like it when they're riding across the desert and Chicory says, I know the world's round, but I'm not too sure this part is.
Yeah. One bit I liked as well was Arthur O'Dwyer saying to his wife, Samantha, that now is not the time for womanly imaginings.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and one character I think is really good fun, because it's a silly film, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
One character that's really fun is Bruder. Yeah. And I think this is the first thing that I've seen Matthew Fox in, other than Lost, and he's good.
Yeah, he is. He plays this sort of pantomime villain.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a goodie. You never think he's like going to turn on them.
But he is as close to moustache twirling as you can get.
Yeah, but his only big flaw is that he loves himself.
Yeah, he's intensely smug. Yeah. Well, but like he's the. It seems like in every Western, like you get the educated man.
Yeah.
Always in a white suit.
Yeah.
And
on a white horse.
Yeah. And always like speaking down to everyone.
Yeah.
Like he always says, "All right, cowboy," in like a really patronising tone. Yeah. It's like, you are a cowboy. To all intents and purposes, you're literally a cowboy. Yeah, I thought it was quite obviously it's painting a very unpleasant, unforgiving world.
Yes,
like all westerns do. But I thought it was quite interesting the dynamic between you've got settlers and then you've got Indians who seem sort of by this stage more or less accepted in society. They've got their local Indian who they get in to analyse
Indian
their crime scene analysis. But then you've got the troglodytes as well. And it's almost like an interesting, like the film didn't want to insult Native American tribes who are still a thing today, and are painted unfairly in a lot of Western films. So it's like they're saying
it's made this monstrous tribe. Even the Native Americans are scared of.
Exactly, yeah. Even the Native Americans don't like them. But yeah, I thought like the writing really benefits the characters. Yeah. And like one thing about Westerns is that the films are always or often very long. And you get a lot of scenes of endless treks along deserts, which give you time for character development. Mm-hmm. And this had a lot of character development. For a horror film, like if you compare it to horror films that we watch, like there's a load of character development.
It takes its time.
Yeah, it's very patient. Like you said, the first 2/3, there's barely any action.
But you get some very memorable exchanges. I mean, Chicory, he's a very, very funny character.
Yeah.
Like, it's not till the last scene when he's talking about the flea circus that you really realise how much of an idiot he is.
Well, he's very pitiful, isn't he, basically?
Yeah. He's a simpleton.
Yeah. And he's played by Richard Jenkins, who's in a lot of like Coen Brothers films and things like that. But he plays that sort of really sort of, like you say, he's a simpleton. And
he's a local small town busybody.
Exactly, yeah.
There's something else about the sort of big journeys across the plains. And it goes with any Western. So that you never know what's around the corner. Like, as soon as it gets dark, everyone's vulnerable. You don't know who you can trust. You don't know what's going to happen next. Yeah. And it's something very romantic and very, I guess, tense. I mean, it's the same. I'll come back to True Grit. I think it is. I think if it's not my favourite film, then it's certainly my favourite story.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just because you never know what's going to happen next. I think the Coen brothers reworking of that movie, they play to that sense of anything could happen.
Yeah.
By having like the man in the bear suit just come from nowhere and try and sell them teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's obviously like a very Coen Brothers thing, but obviously it's all through the Westerns as well.
It couldn't have happened in another movie, for example. Yeah. It has to be a Western just to allow that sort of bizarre unexpectedness.
Yeah. But yeah, like between Chicory and Arthur, who's got the broken leg, it basically amounts to a suicide mission as well. And so it almost proves. What were your what were your feelings on Arthur O'Dwyer's miraculous recovery and then rampage?
It's not really shown, is it? It all happens off camera.
Which part?
The part where you just hear him shooting his way into the building.
Well, you see him recover, and then he makes his way to that valley, and he sees the equipment of his friends. And says, this is where it all happened.
Yeah, he said, I'll take the long way around.
Yeah. Why? Like, if you're entering hostile territory, this is the early How to Survive tip.
Yeah.
Right. If you're entering hostile territory, why would you ever consider going into like a 4 foot wide gap a good idea?
Well, I guess they didn't know that was an ambush.
High ground, as we know, generally high ground is a good thing.
Good vantage point.
Yeah, you can see things. Like, why wouldn't you just go up? Like, that's one thing that I think, like with the cave, which is obviously a set. Like, it's quite clear on screen that it's a set.
Yeah.
I think that's the sort of couple of things where the film lets itself down, because it's got really impressive landscapes throughout.
Yeah.
Like, and really amazing
wide
scenes.
shots.
Yeah, like any Western. But then, like, the little set pieces, the areas where they have the set pieces are sort of a little bit rubbish. Like the cave and like that. Like, it just seems a bit sort of like, oh, right, here we go. Now we know there's going to be an ambush.
Yeah.
And I guess it sort of plays on that a little bit by having it happen in the...
Yeah, we have seen it happen already, so it's not like... Maybe if the opening scene hadn't been there, it would have been more of a surprise.
But, I mean, but they're already past the, like, graveyard site where they come to the 4 foot wide valley, aren't they? But it's all, like, they do subvert that a little bit by having them make it safely through that, and then they're planning their next attack.
Then they get, like, shot again.
Yeah. Which is good. I thought that scene, in fact, was very effective, because it is, like, mid conversation, and I almost had to watch it a couple of times to just go like, oh, what actually happened there? Because Brooder gets hit with a rock, Sheriff Hunt gets hit in the arm with an arrow, and Chicory gets hit on the head with a rock, which seems to make no difference to him. Maybe that's because he's a simpleton.
Yes.
And then while on the ground, Brooder gets his hand cut clean off with a tomahawk. And then they're trying to, like, scrabble for cover, shooting down a couple of people. And Brooder knows his goose is cooked, basically. Yeah. And
he says, "Tie off my hand and leave me." And they do. And then I think he takes down one.
He says, "I'm too vain to live with one arm."
Yeah. I'm too vain to live as a cripple.
Yeah. Like, he's a good character.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. I enjoyed him. But yeah, that scene I thought was really effective, because it is like a very main character who, in the space of a minute, goes from leading the charge to being crippled and then dead. Yeah. And that's it.
It's shocking, but I don't think, it's not a big surprise. I mean, at least one of them will die.
Yeah.
At least some of them.
But that sort of sense of, like, really sudden things, outbursts of violence, sort of reminded me of, like, Backcountry and Jaws and things.
Sure.
And it is like it's like that film, those films, because it's like you're fighting something animalistic and hostile in its own territory. And that's what they're doing, they're at a massive disadvantage, seemingly.
Because they're not painted the colour of the landscape and weapons to the teeth,
Yeah. I liked the bone whistle thing.
Yeah. It's a bit comic booky.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting, I thought, because they don't address it until quite late as well. Yeah. So in the opening scene, you can hear it screaming,
he says,
and you think, like, what
it's just a gust, and he says, like, it's a gust, it's a London instrument.
And when they get shot as well, there's like they exhale through it, and it goes like a weird sort of whistling noise, and, like, because it's not addressed up until that point, you just think
it's weird. And when
unsettling,
when the guy with the boar tusk comes in and he goes,
yeah. I thought the last 10 minutes were a bit naff. Yeah. I think all the scenes in the cave, basically. I'm not a fan of the cave.
No.
It just looks a bit like like the sort of cave that you'd queue in Disneyland Paris. Yeah. Like on the way to Thunder Mountain or something like that.
Park or something.
Yeah, like obviously not
parks,
real sort
plastic
of thing.
Rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
I do have, speaking of B-movie aesthetic, B-movie characters. Obviously, you've got the pantomime villain in Bruder. The sheriff is certainly the town sheriff.
Yeah.
You've got the village idiot.
Yeah.
And then damsel in distress.
Yeah.
Is she a damsel in distress though? Because she starts out in the first sort of 10 minutes, strong, intelligent. You think she's going to be a main character maybe.
Yeah.
And then you've seen the trailer and know what happens. But I kind of half expected them to get there and she'd have outsmarted the troglodytes.
Yeah. Well, it's she still does retain her strength to some extent, because she quite in a scene that I'm a big fan of, basically says, "This is all your fault."
Yeah,
for being just a like masculine arsehole, basically, for shooting Buddy, and then like O'Dwyer as well. It's your fault for going up in the roof during a storm, like for no reason, and breaking your leg. Like I think she retains her strength. She's quite a good character, even though she's only in a couple of scenes. She's played by Lily Simmons, who was last seen wiggling her ass for Woody Harrelson in True Detective season 1.
Oh, really?
Yep. I thought, watching it, that the film's message was basically intelligence is better than strength. But
what makes you say that?
Well, because the troglodytes are very strong and powerful and stupid, and they basically they are defeated by being tricked first by poison. By their like pantomime trying to like drink the thing. Because
they're just impulsive.
Yeah. And then by Arthur O'Dwyer using their whistle thing.
Yeah. Cuts out someone's throat.
Yeah. So I thought that was going to be the sort of message, like, man wins out because he resorts to using his intelligence rather than using his brawn in a film where, overt displays of masculinity are being criticised. Yeah. So I thought that was going to be the theme. But the smartest man dies.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether or not that...
And he makes a big show of being the smart man.
Exactly.
I like the line where he says, you're married, and you're a widower, and I'm unmarried, and that makes me the smart man. And they all agree.
Yeah. But I broadly speaking, I thought it was quite a good film. Like a very interesting film, anyway. It does feel like the director's cut of what could be a shorter and maybe better film.
Yeah.
But then you would lose the character development, which is something that we like a lot about the film.
True. I don't know if that's necessarily what drags. I think if I was making edits, I'd probably tie up that part where they get captured. I think that gets spread over about 3 scenes.
Yeah.
And I'd have it to 1.
I think they get captured by the troglodytes by sort of like 40 minutes before the end of the film, which is quite a long time to string it out over.
And then you've got the waiting around, because you know what's going to happen. Yeah. The guy's going to get there eventually. So
Yeah, it's quite odd actually, because it's like the way it cuts back to Arthur O'Dwyer is like, oh, by the way, this is what he's getting up to.
Meanwhile, back at the gully.
But the whole like hybrid horror thing, hybrid genre horror, is quite tricky to get right. So like you've got good films which are like Shaun of the Dead, which is like horror comedy.
Yeah.
You've got horror sci-fi, which would be like Alien or Event Horizon. And then you've got like horror drama like Black Swan. But I think it's difficult because tropes of genres often like bring you out of the film because they're self-referential or like meta-textual in a way, because like now we're in a spaceship or now we're whatever, and horror films by necessity rely on you being absorbed in the film in order to be effective.
I mean, you take the example of Alien, then it's not tied up in its own like science.
Exactly.
It's not like we have to get the flux capacitor or
exactly. It doesn't get tied up, like the fact that they're in the future and that it's on a spaceship is almost incidental to the rest of the plot, whereas
they could be on a submarine.
Exactly. Whereas there are other films which there are a lot of hybrid horror films are not so good.
I mean, I think we're going to see a big surge of them in the next few years, because we just had Pride and Prejudice and Zombies released. Exactly, I'm not going to go see that.
Well, I'm curious by the trailer, but I understand your reservations.
I think it will be. I mean, the trailer looks okay. But I think, like, it's like what you just said. You can't. I think you can. You can either play it as a complete spoof of the Jane Austen thing, and then have zombies in it.
Yeah.
And that would be funny. But I think you can't do that without it being an indie film.
Yeah.
If you're going for a broad audience, they're going to
Yeah.
go for lame gags.
Yeah, it
And
would be
that-
like the League of Gentlemen film or something like that. You know, like it's going to be like a bit sort of ass kicking.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, but then, you know, you also had like Krampus, which is a horror comedy.
But that didn't really work.
But that's the problem with a lot of hybrid horror films is that, like, you know, they don't effectively live in one genre or another.
No.
Like, whereas I think this is a good example of a film that does actually, it is a good Western and it is a half decent horror film.
It's an authentic feeling Western in that I wouldn't necessarily say that's what Life on the Plains was like, but it feels like a Western movie.
Yeah. It feels like the whole Western setup feels legitimate enough that it does feel like when all the troglodyte stuff happens, you're watching a Western where they've just happened to come across a horror scenario.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I think makes the film effective.
Whereas I don't want to jump to conclusions because I haven't seen the film with Pride and Prejudice versus Zombies, but my assumption would be that they're not going to make the period piece as authentic as that before the zombies show up.
Sure.
It's just going to be a spoof.
Yeah, I think zombies are almost at this point like a shorthand. Like, you don't need to explain or like introduce them ever in zombie films.
Maybe that's the difference. Like,
Maybe.
because they're not zombies in this film. They are
Monsters.
It's cowboys versus Indians.
Yeah.
But the Indians are cannibals.
Yeah.
Did you see Cowboys versus Aliens? Or whatever it was?
I haven't seen it.
Nor have I. But again, I imagine it's more parody.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a parody of a Western.
This doesn't feel comic booky.
No, they're not like, yeehaw, ride 'em cowboy.
Yeah.
It feels like they're trying to set up an authentic Western and then they introduce the horror in it, like you said.
Yeah.
Whereas if they were like doing over the top rodeos and
Yeah.
and the joke was they're falling off horses and do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, but I think broadly speaking, I feel pretty positive in recommending this film.
Yes.
If you like westerns, if you like horrors, it's
Go
good
for
film
it,
to see.
Yeah. Go to howtosurviveshow.com and follow our link to Amazon and you can buy your own copy.
Yeah. So the troglodytes, Joe. What do we know about the troglodytes?
They're very strong,
They are.
quick to action,
Yeah.
as in they got reflexes.
Good. Yeah. Good. Very reactive. They're like patriarchal. One thing we haven't talked about is the like birthing mothers.
Yeah, it's kind of Mad Max-ish, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very Mad Max-ish actually. Yeah, it's so they cut the arms and legs off and stab out the eyes of all the women, and then they just use them to, which is very only very briefly touched upon, but it's quite disturbing.
I mean, they do go past one of the bodies, which is
two of them.
the two.
Yeah, in a pile basically.
Oof.
Yeah, it's pretty grim. Incestuous. They're cannibals. They've got the bizarre tradition of windpipe whistle things.
Yes.
Very hostile. Limited contact with society whatsoever. They're skilled with tools and weapons, and they're not supernatural. Or at least we have no reason to believe that they're supernatural.
No, there's no scenes that depict that.
Yeah, and to assume otherwise would be to break Rule 3 of the podcast rules. So with that in mind, Joe, did you have any ideas how Sheriff Hunt et al. Could have survived better?
Well, there's a big point made about dynamite.
Okay.
They repeatedly mention dynamite. Chicory says, I brought the dynamite. And then even on his deathbed, Bruder says, leave me with the dynamite and I'll blow them all to hell.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I can't do that because they're in the cave. That's going to... But they don't leave them with the dynamite. In fact, they don't use the dynamite at all. So here's my idea. Use the dynamite.
Okay. When?
Give it to Hunt, leave it with him. He can blow the cave up and then you can take the rifle as...
Well, he wouldn't have had it on him because it's with Bruder, just in the middle of a field now.
Oh, yeah.
Next to a man with his head caved in.
So it was left with him to use?
Yeah, I assume so.
And he never got the chance?
No. I assume his idea was that he was going to light it.
With his cigar?
Yeah. But
That's what I thought it was going to be like.
Yeah, he doesn't get the chance to. Yeah.
Still, it's like Chekhov's dynamite.
That never goes off.
Yeah.
Yeah. My piece of advice was from an earlier point in the film: don't piss off the sheriff or commit even low-level crime.
In the Wild West.
Yeah.
That always ends in tears.
Yeah.
You're gonna get yourself what? Hanged, Chris.
Hanged. Yeah, you're gonna end up hanged until dead.
Or at least in jail.
Yeah, I mean, like he arrests Buddy based on the fact that he looks a bit suspicious.
And he's drunk. And he won't look him in the eye.
Yeah, if that is the due process in Bright Hope, then my advice would be
Don't go to Bright Hope.
Yeah. And if the sheriff wasn't such a busybody arresting murderers, then he doesn't shoot Buddy. Samantha doesn't have to heal him. Buddy presumably goes on his merry way and the troglodytes follow him somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's not Bright Hope's problem. Sheriff Hunt survives, his wife isn't a widow, Brooder lives to womanize another day.
And Oadwire's leg can heal in peace.
Exactly.
That doesn't solve the problem of the troglodytes coming to town, though.
But do they come to town because they know Buddy is there?
Yeah, I think they followed him.
Okay. And to steal horses, because they kill the stable boy.
But I think that's incidental. I don't think they were there to steal horses.
So you think they sort of scope the town out for a bit, realise that Buddy is staying there?
Yes.
And then attack?
Yes.
In which case, regardless of whether... Because presumably Buddy is going to stay the night anyway. So that's incidental.
But then...
So, yeah.
If he just stayed in the hotel or something, or a hostel...
Mrs. O'Dwyer wouldn't be injured, but then maybe it would have been the
poor hotel keeper. Yeah, you never know. That's the thing. They can't speculate either.
No.
I will say this: my next survival tip is for the troglodytes.
Okay.
Because they're people after all. They have human rights. Be thorough. Don't just kill a stable boy and kidnap 3 people. But go to town. They got the benefit of the cloak of darkness on their side.
Yeah.
Then you sneak into houses. They've got those bone tomahawks, chop people up.
Yeah.
Take some guns, take some horses.
And it's not as though they're in
a rush.
Yeah, or trying to limit the loss of life that they're inflicting. So it's a good point. Like, why don't they just go on a bit of a rampage?
In fact, there's probably enough people in that town to feed them for a few weeks.
Maybe it is that the troglodytes are really fiercely territorial. And Buddy incites them by ruining their pattern on the ground because he kicks a skull over when he runs away, which is what I assume, given the focus on it as he runs away, I assume that's him desecrating their burial ground, and that's why they hunt him down.
I thought it was just to indicate that they have dead people there, as in they've
possibly
killed.
Yeah, but I think if the alternative explanation for that is that they just they don't want people knowing they're there, or anyone who crosses an invisible line they'll hunt down for nearly 2 weeks out of their way.
True.
Seems a bit strange. Whereas if it's that he's committed some wrong on them by kicking the thing over.
By law.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't hurt them to wipe out the whole town. They'd have survived.
It's true, but are we talking net survival here? Because that actually results in probably fewer people surviving overall in the film. Yeah,
but you could say the same about the Revenant. If he'd killed Fitzgerald early on, then yeah.
I guess so. Going back to the intelligence versus strength debate.
Yeah.
From earlier. I think, like Backcountry, masculinity is the enemy of survival in this film.
Okay.
So, what the Wild West is, and Wild West films generally, are about a lot of sort of posturing masculinity. So, making yourself look and sound and appear as masculine as possible. Like, that seems to be like the sort of law of the land, really.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Where men were men.
Exactly, that's what they say, where men were men. However, Samantha says herself, that it's Sheriff Hunt mistake shooting the drifter in the first instance, and that's what sets off the chain of events. Mm-hmm. And the least overtly masculine characters are the ones who survive. All the troglodytes die.
Yes.
Sheriff Hunt is presumed dead or dying.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Nick, who's sort of the young gunslinger and the capable deputy, he dies.
Yep.
Brooder dies.
Yes.
Buddy dies.
Yes.
And Purvis dies.
Yes. And the stable boy.
Yeah, who's a farmhand, presumably agricultural.
Yeah.
So the people who survive are the women, Arthur O'Dwyer, who is subject to the care of a woman because he's incapable of caring for himself at the moment.
Yep.
And Chicory, who is elderly, frail, can't really do anything, and is an idiot.
Yeah, and
is a doctor, and the only other doctor that we see in the film is a woman.
Yes, and also he lives in the shadow of his dead wife.
Yes, exactly. So, based on that formula, the way to survive this film is to be a non-masculine presence.
Right, so shy away from violence or any confrontation.
Although that's, well, not necessarily that, because Arthur O'Dwyer uses some violence,
right, that's true,
in order to get his way in. But he uses his intelligence more, I would say. And I would say that the people who use their physical aggression, violence and stuff, they're the ones who die. Whereas the people who try and use their smarts, they survive.
I'd say that's true. Yeah, I mean, you don't really... Once you're in the cage, you can't really outsmart the troglodytes.
Although the only potential escape that they put about is by poisoning one of them.
True, yeah.
Which is a woman's weapon, as we know.
Yeah, that's true. But what about... I mean, you say strong. Troglodytes are strong.
Yeah.
Is there a net strength that has to be met in order to exceed the strength required to overpower the troglodytes in any number? So if I was to do, say, deadlift, squats, whatever, and get very strong, and I could walk into the troglodyte camp and pick one of them over my head and throw him, does that increase my chances?
But
if I also read books.
What? So you're going to be equally strong and intelligent?
That's exactly it.
But I think your intelligence will still be the thing that wins out, because if you walk into their camp and pick one up and throw them, your muscles aren't going to save you from a tomahawk to the head.
No, but
if you sneak up behind all of them and you can break all their neck,
pull their head clean off their shoulders
with your bare hands, then you're using your strength and your intelligence.
That's true.
Strength on its own is folly.
What if I threw my own bone tomahawk so hard at them that it went through all of them in one go?
That's skill, though, because you can't. That's not a measure of strength.
They're in a line, and I clean through them all.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily a measure of strength, because firstly, you're going to need two things for that. You're going to need a good throwing technique, right? And I'm pretty sure that technique is more important than strength when it comes to throwing things like boomerangs, javelin, all that sort of thing. So strength is required, obviously.
All right, how about this?
Right. But also you need intelligence in order to fashion your own tomahawk that's sharp enough to...
You can just pick up one of the dead ones.
What?
They drop their weapon, you pick up a tomahawk.
Yeah, fine. That's the smart way around it.
Yeah. Well, how about this? You pick up a small rock.
Yeah.
The size of a fist. Maybe bigger. You know, clean hands, dirty neck, the shot put position.
Yeah.
And launch it.
Yeah.
Now that's strength, right?
Yeah, but that's an understanding of physics that lends itself to intelligence.
I disagree. I don't think, say, a Russian shot putter...
Why Russian?
I don't know, I'm just saying for argument's sake.
Okay.
They were the champions in the Cold War. That's why they are good shot putters. Do they have an understanding of physics? Or do they just know very far?
They probably have an understanding of biomechanics.
Not necessarily true.
Well, I'd imagine there's some more like rudimentary sports science even back in the 80s than just like use hand throw thing very far.
Well, how about this?
Okay.
You pick up one of the troglodytes by the legs.
Yeah.
And you spin around really, really, really fast.
Okay.
And as they all come in to attack you, you beat them each to death with the spinning body of their comrade. Strength or skill?
A combination of both, I would argue, still.
And balance.
Yeah.
So strength alone.
Strength alone is not going to get you anywhere. And obviously strength is including firearms in this instance.
True, yeah.
Which is also skill. So strength alone. And also, I'll tell you who else survives. who is certainly a non-masculine presence. The 2 birthing mothers that we see.
Do they survive? Because they left for dead.
Technically, yes. They presumably wouldn't have starved to death in the time that it takes the film to end.
No. But they're done for.
Oh, yeah.
Eesh.
It's not pleasant.
No.
Did you have any other thoughts?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. One other thing
Right.
that I thought, and again, this might tie into masculinity again. As Deputy Nick is being slaughtered,
Right.
Sheriff Hunt shouts to him that the cavalry is coming.
Yes.
Why didn't he call the cavalry?
How would he?
However you do that.
They did send a telegram because...
No, they sent someone to send 2 deputies to look over Bright Hope while they were gone.
Because Cy Abelman says, how do you spell troglodyte?
Yeah.
For the telegram.
Yeah. But, so okay, yeah, so they've got a telegram. Why not go, like, 3 people have been captured by Native Americans? It's not as though the cavalry, presumably the army, have any problem killing Native Americans.
True. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point, yeah. Send for backup.
It's pretty arrogant to think that 4 men are going to tackle...
I think it's because time was of the essence, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It could be that if you send for, I don't know, the army who could be engaged in battle, or the Pinkerton Agency, who were an early precursor to the FBI, private detectives, you could have sent for them. You could have sent, Chris, for... you could have sent for anyone to support you, but would they have been there in 5 days?
That's
and
true.
would they know where to go?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you could have given them directions, but... Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But I just thought, only 4 people seems not many. Even the Magnificent Seven had more than 4.
Yeah, they had 7.
And they were vastly outnumbered, famously.
And the Hateful Eight
had twice as many.
They only had 8, didn't they?
Yeah, they had twice as many, though.
Don't know how that film... I don't know what it's about, even.
No, I haven't seen it.
The Crazy 88, they had 88, and they got overwhelmed by 1 person.
That's true. It's tricky. Numbers game, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Ridiculous 6.
Not going to watch that.
No. 7 Samurai. They all die.
Yes.
As do the Magnificent Seven, I think.
Possibly. It's based in the same film, isn't it?
Yeah. And then there were none. 1 person survives.
4 brothers, I think they all die.
Okay.
I think.
The famous 5, they got through a lot of stuff, I think.
Yeah, they
were all right.
They survived. 3 Musketeers.
Okay.
Survived.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And D'Artagnan, the 4th, survived as well.
Okay.
But you got 101 Dalmatians. They survived.
Do all of them survive? They must do.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
12 Angry Men.
They all survive.
Yeah.
12 Monkeys. Not actually featuring monkeys, is
no,
it?
is it? It's not. No, not. That's not even a metaphor.
Okay.
28 days later, the days don't survive. They fall off the map. 3 Kings.
3 Kings. They survive.
Yeah.
0 Dark 30. How many of them tried to kill Bin Laden? Was it 30 of them? Was it 0?
Dark. It's dark, mate. It's not clear. 4 Lions. All die.
All die. 4's a bad number.
Yeah. 7 Psychopaths. They all die?
Don't know.
I think so.
Okay. The 102 Dalmatians as well. They will survive in that.
Yeah,
so high numbers, good.
Yes.
Because you have a numerical advantage.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
8 Mile. He survives.
Yeah. But there's only one of him.
There is only one of them. Unless you count the other members.
But they... In the context of the film, they've lost, haven't they?
Yes, they're defeated by 8 Mile.
Sure.
Well, Chris, if there's nothing more to say, I think we can look forward to next week, which will be... Next week will be The Towering Inferno. It's the original. I think they maybe remade it.
Don't know.
Doesn't matter. And after that will be The Poseidon Adventure, latterly remade as Poseidon, but we are doing the original 1970s disaster film.
Yeah, 2 classic disaster movies up next.
So if you've got any thoughts on how to survive in those, do email in to howtosurviveshow@gmail.com and head over to our website howtosurviveshow.com to find all of our back catalogue and even our exclusive Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens episode, which you'll only find there. And if there's nothing more to say, Chris, it's the official opinion of the backup deputy. This podcast is over.